My name's Rob Foster, and I'm clearly not from here, but we'll get to that here in just a second. But I lead the Global Enterprise Collaboration Studio at Deloitte, and so I try not to say Deloitte too much because we're not supposed to be sponsored or anything, sponsoring the show. But anyway, I've been using Yammer for a long time now, probably about 5 years. I led the technical rollout of the global rollout for Deloitte. We rolled it out to about 200,000 users, and I've been using it for quite some time now, and I should probably push the button, shouldn't I, to see that. There we go. Woo! Yeah, so I've been working with Yammer for a long time, been working with the users. SharePoint's also a product of mine as well that I help manage, as well as most other collaboration tools that we leverage at work. So my focus is mainly internal. So I focus mainly, my clients are the different firms inside of my company, right? So UK would be a firm, the US is a firm, so they're my customers, and I focus on that. So I do a lot of traveling with that and get to see a lot of different people, a lot of different types of solutions, and hopefully can bring some of that into here, and the things we've done, the things we've learned, and and talk about that in this session. So again, I'm a senior manager at a Big Four financial services firm. We just synced our Office 365 tenant. We've got just over 400,000 users is what we support in that. So we've got 200,000 employees, and then once you factor in the contractors and the interns and all that stuff, it quickly approaches about 400,000. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a SharePoint MVP. I've been a SharePoint MVP for the last 9 years, and I've been focused on that. Do the SharePoint Pod Show. I'm a co-host of the SharePoint Pod Show. Founded that about 8 years ago. We get about 2 million downloads a year on that, so it's a heck of a lot of fun. We do with Brett Lonsdale and Spencer Harbor, if you know those guys. So I'm a retired author. I've written about 6 books. And I decided to not write books because I wanted to coach my little boys. I've got 2 little boys. I wanted to coach their ball teams and stuff like that. So spend time with that rather than writing books. And I am shockingly, I know what you're thinking, but shockingly a half marathoner. So I just ran a half marathon 2 weeks ago. It was the Lynchburg Jack Daniels half in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Is the Oak Barrel half, and I'm doing one on Sunday. So after all this parties and stuff, it's going to be fun. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is LesPaulRob, and if you want to tweet during the session, it's #SPO15. But you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Pick a social media platform. I'm out there. Now, a lot of questions I get when I'm specifically outside of the U.S. is, where in the world is Tennessee? So Tennessee is right there. It's right in the middle of the southeast of the U.S. We're famous for things like Elvis was from there. Of course, I mentioned Jack Daniels, my favorite. Country music, both country and Western, both types of music. I don't know if anything else, but Gibson guitars, and another favorite of mine is barbecue. So we do a lot of barbecuing. So just to put some context of where I'm from, so people know where Texas is, they know where Florida is. California's out here somewhere, but Tennessee's hard to find. So a little disclaimer before we get started. These opinions and guidance that I give here are my own opinions and don't reflect that of my companies. So if you go out and mess up your network or whatever, not my fault. Please don't call me. But I wanted to say that. So let's open the show. I want to open the show with the power of social media. This is something that happened really, really, really recently. So I came over on Thursday. I was working in the office here in London. I flew Wednesday, got here Thursday. I got a call from my wife Friday morning when she got up, and she was like, well, so yeah, the dog was outside, and he got out, and I don't know where he is. So tried to find him, couldn't find him. So I made these posters on Monday, posted it out on Facebook, right? Can somebody please help me find my dog Sparky? You'll notice here, it went around, but it got like 50 shares, right? So 50 people shared it, and within 10 hours or so, somebody found my puppy. was able to bring him home. So I was thinking about that and how to really apply that, and it's very applicable to social media in the enterprise and all of that, really by looking at your network, right? So if we say that got shared 50 times and 200 people had 200 friends each, 10,000 people potentially saw that in their newsfeed, right, pop up. So I was thinking about that reach, and that's just a really different animal, right, than maybe we would have taken 10 years ago, maybe taken an ad out in the newspaper, right? Would have 10,000 people seen that in real time and be able to get this back. And as this feeds over into the enterprise, things like this actually happen, right? So as you're using things like Yammer and you're using tools like that, you might be looking for project data, or has anybody got experience with this type of technology or this type of approach, or what's the competition doing, things like that. You can get that real-time piece and real-time feedback based on things you're actually doing in your projects. So who's using Yammer in here? Right, okay, so some few people, but about half and half. Well, Yammer, if you don't know, which you've probably heard the term and at least have some context of it, but it's basically a private enterprise social network for employees to connect and collaborate, right? So it's essentially Facebook, Twitter, the likes for the enterprise, to where you can collaborate with people inside your company. It's all based on your email, right? So people with the same email address can collaborate and talk just like you would on Facebook or just like you would on Twitter, but it's all private. So it doesn't go out to the world. It's not publicized and things like that. It's not in a public feed. Now, what does that do to your network, right? So your network, when you're on Facebook, can be anybody, right? It can be your friends, your family, or whatever. So it kind of shrinks it a little bit, right? So you have a little more focused network on Yammer, which are typically people you work with. But it still does allow you to have that extension beyond maybe your team. And you think about, when I first started working in the workforce, how I got stuff done was based on who I knew, right? Who I had physically met. Could I call them on the phone? Could I send them an email? And this changes everything, right? Because working in a big company with, like, say, 200,000 people, I might not know somebody in Australia or somebody in the UK or something like that might be working on something very similar as me. So this lets me extend my network beyond who I physically know to get stuff done. And if anybody has any questions, just feel free to just raise your hand and we'll address those. Oh, right.
What would you consider the minimum size of an organisation to make use of this technology?
So you can. What is the minimum size of an organization to use it? It depends on how you use it. So the way I use it is going to be radically different than the way somebody that has 5 people in their company, all right, using it. Things like, and I know like Lightning Tools is a vendor here that's a vendor sponsor downstairs. I know they use it and they have like 20 employees, right? But they use it to actually do things like projects, right? Project management and things like that. And very focused tasks to where essentially they would have used email before, but they have that trace log to where you can go in there and search things and search for bugs and features. So I don't think there really is a minimum size. You probably wouldn't do it if you had 2 people in your company. But I would say 5 or more, it would be very useful. Yeah.
I think in our organisation, people are looking at persistent chat and link. Is this kind of the same sort of thing, or similar, or different, or is it just that you need to focus on the target individuals?
No, it is. So how does this compare with persistent chat and link? It's similar, right? But if you think about a chat and link, who's involved in that chat? The people that are on that link conversation. Whereas this takes that same concept and puts it out there for anybody to be able to see. And sometimes you want that, and sometimes you don't. Now, there is a feature inside of Yammer called groups, right, to where you can isolate those conversations based on topic, and you can make some of those groups private. So you might have like an executive group to where only your executives can see that and can contribute. But it's very similar to a link persistent conversation, except it's public, right? It's public to your company.
Yeah. And can you get on-premise as well, or is it just on?
It's just in the cloud. Yeah, so, yep. All right. So we talked about how it helps connect, and one of the things we find value in is the way you can search past conversations. So if you're looking for something, maybe you have a question, and that question or something has already been answered, and you can just go out and search for that. And whereas like in Link, as an example, if you don't persist those conversations, it dies when your IM window closes. So being able to search for conversation for relevant information. Yep. So How do you achieve business value? One of the things that we see is actually kind of I wanted to highlight the underlined words here, is you're able to find answers faster, extend your network, share best practices so that you can, here's what happened on this project, and here's how things happen, and how things transpired. So crowdsourcing for great ideas and constructive feedback. And I'll talk about this a little bit in the later demo, but things like crowdsourcing. There's one of the case studies for Yammer that you can go out and read on yammer.com is there's a hamburger place in the U.S. called Red Robin. Do y'all have a Red Robin here? You don't have that. So it's like Five Guys. You heard of Five Guys? Yeah, it's kind of like that. But it's so it's like Five Guys. But they had this hamburger, and basically it wasn't really selling that good, and they didn't know why it wasn't selling that good. But the people making the food and the people serving the food that had direct contact with the customers knew why it wasn't selling, and it was some kind of sauce they had or whatever. So they were actually able to use Yammer, extend that out to the people that were serving and making the food, collaborate on what's wrong with this hamburger, and really make a decision and change the formula for how they created this hamburger within like a 4-month time span, whereas previously, had they done a study, it would have taken 18 months. So they took that 18-month span, pushed it in Yammer, and condensed it down to 4 months and got some real-time feedback. So being able to crowdsource with people that are on the ground and do that is just something that is changing the way we deliver. So support teams, another big business value is support. Oh, quick.
Did I put a specific statement to Yammer group, or did I push a question for the hamburger formula?
Yeah, so they pushed the question was, did somebody go out to a Yammer group and say, hey, here's what I think's wrong with this hamburger? No, I think the executives went out there and posted, what's wrong with this hamburger? Our sales are down, and then people started going, oh, I'll tell you exactly what's wrong with this hamburger. Yeah. And that's a hard thing for an executive to change over to, right? Because you typically have these big focus groups and the studies, and you go out and do this stuff. And being able to hear that feedback, because sometimes, it's talking about selling hamburgers, right? But sometimes it might be something like, what's the leadership doing, right, that could be improved? And you get some really good feedback then, right? So being able to open that up and be able to accept that feedback. Like maybe people don't agree with the strategic direction of a company, and being able to put that question out there and as a leadership team, be able to accept that feedback as constructive and not punish people for going, well, I think we're going on the toilet. So it's not, it's something there for crowdsourcing, right? And that's definitely a change in a leadership style, as opposed to, hey, I'm the CEO of the company, it's my way or the highway kind of thing, right? Yeah. One of the key ways we've used it here is the support team. Setting up a support team on Yammer. We recently just did a big SharePoint migration, right? From 2010 and 2013 to 2013 in the cloud. Now, we were migrating thousands of sites, right? And these thousands of sites required us to touch all thousands of these sites. And we had to reach out to the content owners and the site owners of these sites. By being able to set up a Yammer group, we were able to support these people when they had questions. They could just go out and say, hey, my site doesn't work, or this content is not coming over right. We could quickly do that as opposed to have to call each one of them and worry about that. So it was definitely a good case for that. Onboarding of new hires, giving them a venue to ask questions for how do I find the travel policy, or how do I find this, or how do I find that, as well as to extend their network. Because when you drop into a new company, you don't know anybody. You might know 5 or 6 people on your team, but you don't know anybody. So being able to have that line of communication to extend your network is something pretty special for new folks coming on board. And something I use a lot, I think some of our people use a lot internally, but definitely myself and Ben Robb in the back there, we use this thing called external networks a lot to communicate with Microsoft and to communicate with maybe other companies or whatever, so that we can have Yammer and I can have my stuff, but I can also connect with other companies outside of here. So we have like an MVP group, like a SharePoint MVPs group, and we can talk about things, when we're in Redmond or some new features coming out. We have a question. So Yammer is not really isolated to your company. you can also extend it out and collaborate with other people across companies. So, the communications technology revolution. I wanted to pull these stats are a little old now, but it's basically talking about how more people are using email, specifically millennials, or not using email, and using social networking to communicate. So what we're seeing is as people are coming out of college today, having a tool like Yammer is almost expected, right? Because that's how they've been communicating with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of this. So we're seeing that, just given the stats here, 1.4 billion Facebook users with over 150 billion connections, right? 300 million Twitter users with 1 billion tweets every 4 days, right? And at the end of 2012, the number of mobile devices actually exceeded the number of people in the world. So being able to get this information and being able to ask a question and get in real time an answer without having to know the right people or whatever is absolutely expected. And it's not going to, it's as expected now with people coming out of college as it was when I came out of college, and I just knew I was going to have an email address, right? There was no question in my mind, like when I go to a new company, that I'm going to have an email address. This same type of stuff is happening now with social media, to where these people are coming into the workforce and they're expecting some kind of social media solution to be there, right, to get these instant results. So questions with this is, have you ever had any type of questions like this? Does anybody know a good tax lawyer? What's the protocol for engaging with whatever? What is our competition doing? Who's going to this conference? So a lot of these questions that you might have might be a good fit for asking in Yammer. And this is questions you could have every day, right? Who's handling this account as we're going out there and we're starting to build business internally. So, question.
Questions like that are fine, but where in Yammer do you ask them? Because you've got all these groups. Let's say you've got a SharePoint question.
Yep.
You need to go to the SharePoint group.
Yep.
You assume that there will be lots of SharePoint people in there. How do you get these groups started? Because we have groups of communities of expertise on Yammer.
Yep.
With nobody in there.
Right. So that's let me just jump over here. It's just easier to show you. Well, what we did, we have a very not controlled, but we have a very governed group creation process, right? And so I've got all my groups over here. And this is Yammer, of course, and we've got, Yammer has your groups on the left, just to kind of describe the interface. So you got your groups on the left, you got your announcements at the top. These are announcements both from a network level, so I can get announcements posted to me by a network admin. I can also get group-based announcements. Most of these are group-based announcements. This is my news feed. Over here, on the right, I've got a network usage policy, and I've also got recent activity based on groups and people that I'm following. And then suggested people for me to follow, people that are like me, that maybe post like me or they belong to similar groups, things like that. So what we've done is I've got a lot of groups out here, and I'm a global admin, so I actually see all the groups. But one of the things we've done is really taken from a knowledge management perspective, right? Every time a group's created, our knowledge management group knows this group's been created. So what's happened is that anybody can create a group, but if I create a SharePoint group, you can see there's actually, to highlight your question, there's actually a SharePoint group here, right? And there are people in there asking SharePoint questions. Now, me being a SharePoint person as well, if I go out here and create like a Rob's SharePoint group, one of the knowledge managers are going to go, hey, do you really mean to create a new group for this? Or do you think your questions might actually need to go in here? So sometimes if you see groups being created and not used, it may be because people don't know to go there, or they're going somewhere else into another group, right? So we're combating that with being able to not govern the groups. We don't want to govern the groups, but more steer people into, hey, you created a similar group as to what's going on over here. Do you want to maybe create that? And that's really how we've been doing it, and it's been very successful for that. As far as, I don't want to say it's a best practice, because what's a best practice, but it's something that's worked for us, right? We do, yeah. So we've got groups for like the Canadian members, whatever, Yeah, based on whatever you are. But we wanted it to be more freeform. I mean, there are some specific instances like that, to where we're like, hey, we want a group for people that are in Canada. But for the most part, it's just free form. You can join and leave anytime. Yeah.
And have you seen acceleration of adoption on that basis? Did it start off slower and then
As far as adoption of Yammer or adoption of?
adoption of Yammer across the 400,000 users internationally?
It started off organically, right? So we started off with the freemium model, right? So it was basically a bunch of people using the free version, and then it was enough people using it to where we decided as a firm, hey, let's go with the premium version of this and buy it. And then that's when we had to go with the global, let's get everybody in, what's the communications plan around this and all that. But until then, it was just very organic, and there were probably, I don't know, what, 10,000 users or so that were around there, and so something like that. So it's, yeah.
You're following up on the question he had about where to post, because you can still post at the very top level when you have a question that you don't know which group it fits into. So is that what people are doing, or are they actually using the groups, posting within the groups?
I did that, but let me go in here and I'll show you an example of, and I'm totally blowing my later demos. But these are great questions. Yeah, so if you look at this, within the past 7 days as an example, we've had 4,295 messages posted, right, within the past 7 days. We've had almost 4,000 likes. We've added 1,100 members. People have uploaded 651 files. So at a volume of that, you can't really post in the main newsfeed. Exactly. Right. So you have to really go, what am I looking for? And you have to use, I use search a lot to say, is there a group out here? Is there a topic? Is somebody talking about what I want to know? And then I can find that, go to that place and find that. Because we've got hundreds of groups, right? I mean, just hundreds of them. And, like we've got, just this week, we had 13,000 people on here, collaborating, which is, of the 200,000 people or whatever, it's not great percentages, but the people that are using it are getting a lot of value from that.
So there's training involved also?
Not really. Not really. No. Yeah. I mean, it's if you look if you look at the screen, right? I mean, if you know how to use Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you know how to use Yammer, and it's going to be slow to load.
Do you find people spend hours and hours just in it, surfing it like Facebook?
No. I mean, occasionally, right? If you're looking for something, but I think people they go there, they post a question, they leave, and they come back and do that. I mean, it's not. But even if they are spending significant amounts of time in there, it's not wasted time, right? So they're actually finding it because of the audience, right? You're not going to go in there and post pictures of your dog. You're not going to go in there and post, whatever, vacation pictures. You might, but so I mean, there's I mean, it's not really something that people are spending hours and hours doing, but people are spending time there, right, doing that.
How do you know how much time people are spending on that?
You don't really. But if you look at the number of people using it, right, you can assume that there's significant amounts of time here to upload files and, right.
There are no ways of measuring, there are no metrics built into it that say, that track how much time people are...
I don't think it goes to that detail there for tracking how much time people are on a page.
How do you kind of manage your users? Because we had Groove, for example, in our organisation, and people go, and Microsoft go, yeah, it's great, it's got encryption at 256 bit or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then you find that actually it is great, but because as an organisation, when they were early adopters, what was happening was people were leaving the organisation and then still 30 days later still logging into the project.
Mhm.
So does Yammer allow you to almost federate against your Active Directory or something like that to only have valid users in, or is there a policy for adding and removing users as part of another account?
Yes, there are two things, and it looks like either my internet connection just died or the cloud just died. So, yeah, there are things that you can do. Yes, the answer is yes. There's a couple ways you can do it. They have a sync tool that you can actually synchronize from Active Directory. So it takes, thank you, it takes all of the users that are in Active Directory and it synchronizes them up to Yammer. And so the deltas happen every day. So as you delete users or disable their accounts, that gets synchronized up. And there we go, we're back, yay. Or the most common scenario is using SSO, right? So you can use SSO, so it's immediate, and you can do it that way, right? Yeah.
You mentioned before the role of knowledge managers. Are they roles that you already have in your organisation,
we didn't create new roles per se, but yeah, it was more of a knowledge management function to actually manage this. Yeah, so there wasn't really like we don't have a Yammer team specifically or anything like that. We didn't create a whole, we created processes behind this, but it was just part of the knowledge management. It's the same people that own the intranet strategy or the, the team site strategy, the knowledge management piece of that. Yeah, it was just another collaboration tool added to the toolbox. Okay.
Are senior managers using it, the executive, and if so, how did you get the buy-in?
Yeah, that's a key factor in driving adoption. Is executive buy-in, not only buy-in, but usage. You have to have your executives on there. People have to feel that they can reach out to your executives. As an example, when we launched, we did because we have people all over the world, right? I think we started it in Australia, right? I think we started it, they have things called Yam Jam. They call them Yam Jams, but it's so we basically had a Yam Jam that followed the sun and went all the way around the world. So wherever it was at like 10 a.m. your local time, there was a Yam Jam happening, and it was the local executives from that region, right? So it was like the CEO from Australia was on there, and you could talk to him, or the CFO from the UK or whatever. And so unless your executives buy into this, not only buy in, but use it, right? It's difficult to sell, right? It's difficult to get people to adopt it if they don't feel that the executive team takes it seriously. Now, we were fortunate enough to where they were like, yes, this is a great way for me to reach out to my people and all of that. But executive buy-in's key and usage to do that. And I've got a story about some funny things that have happened through that coming up. But yeah, that's a huge thing because they have to use it. If people don't think the executive teams take it seriously, if they think it's just some social tool, they'll go there once or twice and then they won't come back, right? Yeah, so talk about Yammer. Now, as far as like groups go or external networks, we talked a little bit about external networks. Like we had an external network for SharePoint Evolution speakers, right? And this is a place where we could all go and talk and hey, when's everybody coming into town? Or hey, I'm having this problem, this issue on these sessions. So all these people are speakers here this week. So we actually created, as an example of extending outside of my home network, we created a group for all of us to kind of collaborate about, when are we coming in, what are we doing, things like that. So, it's kind of cool to have this as an example of how we used it, right? So we actually used this to collaborate about the conference coming here. That's cool. I'm sorry? No, it's not a public group. No, yeah, it's closed, but yeah, speakers only. Yeah, so that's an example of kind of an external network. So we talked about some common usage, meeting colleagues, gathering opinions, crowdsourcing. What are people doing? What are people working on? How do you rapidly disseminate information? Now, it seems like every time I do a talk on Yammer, something crazy happens. Like this time in social media, it was my dog went missing, right? So I had to go find my dog. The last time I was here doing this 2 years ago, when we did this show in London 2 years ago, 3 hours before I took the stage to talk about Yammer, there was a bombing at the Boston Marathon, right? Does anybody remember that? Heard of that? So what I wanted to do was post that. This was a slide from the last time I talked. So it doesn't always have to be social, right? And we actually had my company had people running the Boston Marathon. So within 3 hours of the bombing happening, somebody posted a network. It was actually the news network, and then it was basically the people from HR were like, hey, if you're running the Boston Marathon, you need to check in with us to make sure you're okay, because we want to really get to you. Because when it happened, the first thing the NSA did, the National Security Agency, did was they killed the cell phone towers. So they turned them all off. You couldn't call in or out of Boston at all. So this found a way for them, because they didn't know if these bombs were being detonated by cell phones, right? So they turned all the cell phones off. So within 15 minutes of that bombing happening, people started posting, are you okay? And people started responding, right? So it doesn't have to be all social. It doesn't have to be about meeting people. It doesn't have to be about crowdsourcing. It doesn't have to be about anything else. It could be something as simple as, you still alive, right? And that's big. that was a big thing for us because it really gave our people a way to check on people and find out, hey, my friend's running, and I'm, hoping they're okay, right? So it's far beyond the social aspect, right? Far beyond that from a business benefits for us, so as an example. So how do you start using Yammer, really, is the kind of thing here. So logging into Yammer, wanted to talk about this. When you sign in, when you first sign up to Yammer, you sign in with an email address and you create a Yammer password. As you progress in your Yammerness, right, if that's a word, you'll probably want to sign up with SSO so that you're federated with your Active Directory, so that when people come into your company or they leave your company, they gain access to Yammer when they come in, and when their Active Directory account gets disabled, they lose access to Yammer because you don't want them to have access to any of the stuff in here after they're gone. So another thing you have out in Yammer is a profile, and I want to kind of pull this up. I'm just going to the dots on the side. This is kind of a little drop-down menu, and let me just go back to my home network so I can see the best view. But it looks the same as far as this goes. And why is this not? All right, there we go. So go back here. Let's go to the profile here, settings. Here's my profile. So these values in here are actually synchronized from Active Directory. So we're pulling this in automatically. It knows where I'm from. It knows my name, the picture I uploaded, but things like that. And there's some additional information you can add, like your phone number, your local IM, your Twitter account, things like that. But simple profile, very simple. It's got more properties than this that you can turn on. But basically, it's a simple profile to help you find people. I'm looking for a senior manager in New York, or I'm looking for a consultant in London. To when you go searching for people, you can actually find them in there. So make sure you fill out your profile because it does impact how people find other people, right? Make sure you have to set this up to synchronize into here if you're doing sync, or if you're not synchronizing, encourage your people to fill this out, right? Because you want them to be able to find people and have that available, right? One of the things that I think is drives me bonkers sometimes is the notifications. Yammer has really good notifications, like really good. And what you have to do essentially is you have to come out here and you can set up how you want to be notified from Yammer. One of the things that I don't get notified of, and I turned this off, and I think it's the default to be turned off, but it used to not be, is notify me when there's new content in my home feed, which if you saw my home feed, there's a whole lot of postings going on there, right? So you're getting emails every time somebody posts. But basically you can get a daily digest or a summary. You can get it either daily or weekly, or never. You might not ever want one. So email me when I receive you have a Yammer inbox. You might want to email when you get that, you get a new message, when you get new followers, when you install an application. So there's all kinds of different notifications you can get, what do you think that does to adoption? Could drive it up, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, I've got this Yammer thing. Somebody's following me. Let me go back into that. So the problem for adoption or issues with adoption you have with any application is not getting them there, it's getting them back. So this is one of those things that helps get people back because it keeps it fresh, it keeps it in their email, it keeps Yammer, and it keeps the conversation right in front of their face. And they can start coming back there. So make sure your notifications are set up, right? And at least your people, your practitioners, your users, know how to know what that means and how to set those up. All right?
Do you govern that, or do you just steer people in the right direction to make use of it?
We steer people in the right direction because it could be custom. I might want something different than you do. Yeah, so it's...
Right, even if you did govern it, the end user could still override.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want it to be more flexible. Governance in Yammer, yes, we have it, right? But it's very minimal, right? It's typically, what we're finding is mostly self-governed, right? So people that post things that could be not questionable, but maybe it's posted in the wrong place. They could say, hey, you might want to move this over here or have this conversation in this area or whatever, or maybe this is inappropriate, right? So it is self-governed that way, yeah. But yeah, so things like settings, my settings are going to be different than your settings, which are going to be different from your settings. And so we wanted to keep that. Yeah. So understanding my feed, the feeds that are out here as we look at this, very similar, kind of common stuff, very similar to Facebook. So you have top conversations, and this is kind of the conversations window. All right, so you have top conversations. I can say, look at all conversations, which is very broad, or conversations of people that I'm following, right? So when somebody goes in there and collaborates, I might say that this guy, Kevin, it looks like he's collaborated in here in this group, and it's like, hey, I'm connected to Kevin somehow. Maybe that's a group I should be interested in. So it kind of highlights the things and helps you find content and helps you really drive to that. But I mostly keep it on top. You can search anyway for that. So that's the top conversations, the following conversations. Now, searching for content. I'm just going to search, and there's obviously a search box at the top, as there is with most systems. I'm just going to search for the content related to Excel, like Microsoft Excel. And we've got to kind of set the stage for where we're going with this. We have being a financial services firm, you can imagine we've got some really power Excel users, really good power Excel users. And we've got a group out here that I follow, that I've been following pretty much since I joined Yammer, since we launched it, called Excel Tips and Tricks. And there's some amazing stuff going on in there that, just being a geek like I am, it's kind of cool to see that. But, so if I search for the word Excel, obviously in the drop-down, you saw that group called Excel's Tips and Tricks. But as I search for it, I can find maybe conversations that are related to Excel. And it could it could be the word, or it could be Microsoft Excel, and it kind of highlights that here. So I've got groups that are related to Excel, right? So I've got that. So you can see there's the group I'm going to take us to. And it has how many members? It's got like 12,000 members. They've got different groups for different things. There's files that could be related to Excel. There's notes that people have posted. There's topics or hashtags. So as you hashtag things in your feed, you might want to hashtag Excel. And I can click that, and it'll actually run a search or whatever on this and show me topics. There's polls. I don't know what we want to see with polls, but things like that. And there's also some more things out here, links and praises that Yammer has to do this. So if I look at groups, I was able to quickly find this group, go, yep, that's a huge group. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go into there, and boom. And you can see that, there's people posting in here around this. There's, hey, I'm looking for this, blah, 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 solution, and then there's some replies, here's how you solve the problem, things like that. And there's all these people posting macros, hey, I found a cool way to do this macro or to make this calculation. And it's really, people should have PhDs in this stuff. It's amazing.
Are everyone posting in English? They're a global firm.
Yes, they are posting in English for the most part. I mean, occasionally you'll get some Dutch or French or whatever, but yeah.
Are they governed to post in English by someone,
Nope.
or is it just?
No, you can post most of the posts are in English, but you don't have to.
It does translate though. That's a weird trick, because people in Latin America don't speak English, even though that's the people who use it at a low level. They all talk in Spanish, but if I want to get in a conversation, I just click translate. It translates all the languages down in.
Yep. Yeah.
It's within Yammer. It uses Bing Translate. It'll do all the different threads and you just translate it.
Yeah.
Translate them all down.
Yeah, the Bing translates. It's not built into Yammer. It's something you have to.
Well, it's a tick box. You have to be on the enterprise. You have to be on the paid version, not the free version. So the language comes from if you post a foreign, then you paste Spanish in there because it knows your English. You won't offer the translation. But if somebody that speaks Spanish posts Spanish and you go see that, there's just a little translate option where that more button is.
Right.
They click the translate. The whole
It's
thread
on
will be
there. If you
translated.
scroll down a bit. I saw it, translate.
It's normally it shows up there next to the more. There's a translate.
Go down.
There you go, translate down there.
That's it.
Right.
Go right.
See the translate. Won't be able to translate.
Yeah.
His language is not English, but it'll translate dynamically.
It's handy for us, because about half our posts are in German, right, quarter in English, and a quarter in Dutch.
The concern I had about the translation was, is it good enough?
Yeah.
Right? But what would you do otherwise? You copy the text, you go to Google, you do translate. For conversations, it's good enough.
Yeah.
It won't be a legal document, but it's good enough.
Never
There's
seen
about
that.
28 languages, I think, that it translates into.
I'll
And the
have
whole
a look
stuff,
for that.
the whole thing can be in a different language. So if you're Portuguese, it's not just the content that translates, the whole framework translates.
You have to click, and it's hidden, because if you look down the
Certainly is,
US
because
English,
I've never seen
click
it.
that, so you change it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's great. That's great. It's amazing what you learn when you present. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, searching for content. The search is good. It's not great. It's good. It's good enough for finding content and conversations. Now, joining groups. The way you join groups is when you click on your groups, right, you're going to be presented a pop-up. And it's going to allow you to click on, these are kind of the most popular groups in your network. You can go out there and you can find things, and it sorts. There's an algorithm that Yammer has that filters networks up to you. And you can, I think as the admins, they can target groups to this thing. Or I can look at this and go, yeah, I think I might want to add this group or join this group. Or I can just click view more groups and it'll show you all the groups here. And then I can search groups, right? So I can search for that Excel tips and tricks, click search, and it'll find it, and there's the group. You can see I'm joined already. But very, very handy for when you're actually going out there to look for groups, look for content, look for people that are posting things that might have your answer or have an answer to your question, or that you can post the question. Always good to find the groups there. So groups are things that are beyond the main news feed that let you focus your questions or focus your topic around a particular area. Yes?
Did you have, or do you have, like we have communities of interest where we're using the same sort of thing for political, because it works really well in the organisation, has for a very, very long time. Did you have that kind of thing, this kind of thing within email at some point, or is it just a completely new concept to your organisation?
Yeah, so like distribution lists or whatever. Yeah. We had DLs, but not on a wide scale, right? Not on a wide scale at all. I mean, yeah, it's the dynamic nature of this and being able to search and find things, because DLs, you kind of just had to know the DL, right? Or you could search through Active Directory when you added that person or that DL to the thing. But yeah, this, as far as the extended nature of this, yeah, it was something fairly new, because it was for the first time, me as just a regular user, I could go out there and create a group and start collaborating on that topic. Whereas you can't really do that in our organization around DLs, right?
In ours, we're very much focused around it, so you could easily create new distribution lists and people sign up on their corporate records and things. So I just wondered if you had something before and this replaced it, but
Yeah.
it's like a new kind of concept pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And DLs, again, it's something else that's different than a DL, right? Because a DL, once an email goes out, that's it, right? Anybody that joins after that won't get that email. They won't have that.
We can have a system for archiving and searching it, but this looks so much cooler.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, we've just had distribution lists for 20 odd years, or however long, so we've built this kind of thing around that. But,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, see those official groups in TNT? That's one of those community interests.
This.
TNT official.
Yep.
Yeah, where it says official, that the community interests.
Okay.
Yeah, the KMs.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So we had a group, and there's a session going on, like, what is the last session of the day, and Rebecca's doing it here, so raise your hand. Just wave at everybody. So, but Rebecca works with us in our Australian firm, and she's here to talk about this. And funny thing, so we talked about executive buy-in, right, a little bit, and one of the executives in Australia, Australia is one of the most active networks, didn't know what we didn't know at this time, or he didn't know at this time, that you could create groups with the mobile app. So there's a mobile Yammer app that you can install on your phone or whatever, and he just had the mobile app installed, and he had it in his pocket, and as you do, it created a group for him where the pocket dial fell, and the group is called As Awa. Did I pronounce it right? Right, it's close enough. That's what it created, right? And so what happened was people were like, "What is that?" So people started responding, and what is this? And then it was, they started making fun of the thing. It was like, "Hey, this partner created this group, and what does this mean? What are they trying to do?" But most surprisingly about this is that we let it grow organically. Right? We didn't go, "Oh, haha, let's delete that. Let's make sure there was no, embarrassing thing that happened to the partner or whatever." But this actually grew more organically, and it's become a site for basically a hangout, to where people go and they post, internet memes or whatever. But they go and hang out and post just fun stuff in this group. But it was kind of something that we had as an executive fail that turned into one of our most successful stories of Yammer. Is that just using it that way and being able to have the executives buy into that and say, typically as a kind of a a suit, right, you would want that deleted, right? It looks bad on me or whatever. But no, they just left it open, and people started having fun with it. And now it's a really fun group, and it's a great story, great success story. So it was a failure that we turned into a great success story. And you'll hear more about that in Rebecca's session. Please go see it. But yeah, that's something that, you know, when it comes to driving adoption, again, it's not about the social business side of it. Sometimes it's about fun. Sometimes it's just about, I need a place to go and, you know, post pictures of cats with some text on it or whatever, you know. So, I mean, it's something fun there. You can also follow people. You can follow key people in your organization. So you can, for colleagues, you can share project status, find common interests, and share discuss links. And this is where we use it a lot, is sharing project status. Like I gave the example of the SharePoint migration, right? We had a group out there for our migration. We had people come in there and posting questions there. And it was more, they could check the status of their site. Like we could say, hey, these sites were migrated at this time. Here are the issues. Here's the things. But they could also say, my site was migrated and I'm having these issues. So they could actually use it as a port channel from a colleague level, as opposed to having 100 emails go out, right, for that. Hey, this site went out. This site went out. This site went out. We could actually post one status and not fill up people's inboxes, right? So it was something very, very good there that we used. So from a manager level, so as you move up the hierarchy, working with Yammer through your employees, share upcoming team goals, connect staff with other teams, and manage projects. So I guess this is more of connecting and growing your employees' internal social network, right? The people they know, how they can get stuff done. And then senior leadership can use it to communicate global strategies. They can gather feedback about policies, which could be interesting. Some leaders might not be open for this, but a lot are. You would be surprised how many leaders would want to get feedback on their strategies and their policies. And then recognize performers. So you can, they have a badging, and there's some gamification stuff in Yammer, so you can actually give like little badges and things as part of this. So as a general rule of Yammer, you can actually follow anybody in your company. So anybody that's in your network, you can click follow and follow them, and you'll see their post and show up in your news feed, right? So that's something very open. You don't want to not allow that. I don't think you can not allow that, but there. So the way you follow somebody is you can go to their profile. So you do a search for people. Here I've searched for Nan Smith, and there's a follow button right here on the right side. And you click follow, and you're following them. And if they have the notification on, they're going to get a notification that says, hey, Rob's following you now. Yep. So there's all kinds of mobile apps and iPad apps and Windows Phone and iPhone and BlackBerry, desktop, Android. You can get to Yammer anyway. There's a lot of these different ways you can actually use this and collaborate. But you'll find the mobile apps are very similar to Twitter and Facebook. So there's not a lot of training required for them, and people just install them. I have an iPhone, so I download it from the Apple App Store, and then I sign in, and it goes right to my network. It knows who I am, and it even works with SSO. So integration with your current platforms. One of the key things we're doing here is, if you look at a Yammer feed, or let me just go to a Yammer group, and let's just pull this SharePoint group, or the Excel tips and tricks. There's no telling what we'll see in this SharePoint group. So, so Excel tips and tricks. One of the things you can do as far as integration, we have a lot of intranets, right? We have a lot of team sites. We have a lot of things that I might want to share a group outside of the context of Yammer. The way you do that, if you click this button here, on the bottom right-hand side of the right panel, there's a little link there that you may notice, may not have noticed, but it's called Embed This Group in Your Site. And what it does, if you click it, it basically gives you some HTML that you can paste into your site, whether it be a SharePoint site or it could be a PHP site. It doesn't have to be, it might be an HTML page or whatever. And you basically just paste this in, and what it will do is it'll bring this news feed right into your page really easily. So that you can bring your feeds into your apps and the context of maybe a team site or maybe a website somewhere. You can bring this feed into the context of that to maybe add value to that without having to hook into there. There's no coding skills required other than copy paste, right? You don't have to go code this and hit an API or learn any kind of special tools. You copy and paste this in, and it just works. we found a lot of value in that. And when we did our migrations, we found our users apparently found a lot of value in that, because we found embed things in there all over the place, to where people were actually embedding this in their team sites, to where you might have a team site to where a project team is collaborating on on project work, right? They might be doing customer work or whatever. And then they would have a team site or an embed link in there to be able to maybe post things on the Yammer site or Yammer group for them.
So you embed that code into a page. If the person looking at the page into which you've embedded the code does not have a Yammer login, what happens?
If they don't have a Yammer login, they won't see the feed. They won't, this feed will show and it'll say, hey, log into Yammer for that. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Did you used to use SharePoint newsfeed before Yammer?
Yes.
And what happened in the...
So we have the not so common problem of having a bunch of farms, right? So when you have a bunch of farms, we were before we did our consolidation to 2013, we were supporting about 120 SharePoint farms, which if you know anything about managing SharePoint farms, that's a lot, right? And so we were managing that many farms, and if you look at the SharePoint news feed, it's at the farm level, right? So once you go from a farm to another farm, you've got another SharePoint news feed that's not connected. So we actually didn't use the SharePoint news feed that much, right? Because it was at the farm level. Yeah, so yeah, you can, but if you have fewer farms, but yeah, we ended up not using it.
Inside level, they weren't used
That's
much.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think there's huge value in this. I think there's huge value in embedding this stuff, because a lot of times people don't think to go to Yammer, but what it does is it gets that type of context into your applications very easily and very quickly. And if I'm a SharePoint content manager, right, I could be somebody in knowledge management that doesn't know any coding skills. I can easily copy and paste, boom, you're done, and it just works. So Yammer embed, huge. Yammer for SharePoint, so there was the SharePoint 2013 news feed, and it's still available if you have SharePoint 2013, but you can also use Yammer and have messages post up to there. There's Active Directory Sync that we talked about. And then there used to be some web parts available that you could install on your SharePoint farm, but a couple of weeks ago, was it a couple of weeks ago? Maybe a couple of months ago at this point, Microsoft discontinued those, so they're not going to support those, and the approach would be use Yammer embed for that. If you want to extend Yammer and you have a team of developers that would like to do this and create your own custom app, you can integrate with Yammer using Open Graph. So they have an Open Graph API over the top of this. So we looked at Yammer, we looked at the network, and so how should you grow your network? The first key piece here is we talk about executive participation. Not necessarily buy-in, but have your executives participate. Make them available and let them be available to post messages and get feedback, things like that. Build momentum around content, around groups, and around people. So you're not going to have as many groups as we have when you start Yammer, or you might now today, but as these groups start getting created, start building momentum around those and let them grow organically, right? So huge thing around momentum. Integrate into business processes. So as an example, we talked through the session, we used it for the SharePoint migrations. Other teams are using it for their different business processes too, collaborating with clients, could be, or around clients. So let them integrate it with business processes. Now, you're not going to know all the business processes. Let people figure that out, right? So they're going to figure out ways to use that.
Give a restriction on the type when you get to the type of data. You say client related. Is it because it's in the cloud? Can they talk about customers, or is the guidance to say don't mention it?
For us, it depends, right? But yeah, typically it's no customer data up there in the Yammer. But yeah, it's typically that, but it really depends on the context on that. Yeah.
Office 365 is launched. Groups of 365 basically. There seems to be some similarities between Office 365 and Yammer groups, and I can see some of mine who just thinking, where do I create an Office 365 group? I create a Yammer group? Do I create both? Put stuff in both. Again. Has Microsoft got a feel for or a steer on what groups are for what, or is there any Microsoft can use an Office 365 group in Yammer?
That's a very interesting thing that I'm watching, right? I'm watching that very, very closely because the question was Office 365 groups is a new thing that Microsoft just released. I think was it last week the announcement came out. And it's very similar to Yammer. It's team site based, very similar to Yammer. The answer is I don't know where they're going with that because it is, I have my suspicions, but it's all related from like NDA conversations. But I think that's something we have to watch, right? Because I don't know what they're doing with that and how, because it does directly, somewhat indirectly at this point, compete with Yammer, right? So it's confusing to have an Office 365 group. Do I post things here? Do I create a group here? Or do I go to Yammer and create a group there? You can do similar things. You can collaborate in similar ways. But it's definitely something I'm going to watch. I don't know the answer to that question yet. I think over the next 9 months, 12 months, it will probably clear up for everybody. But it's something that we as an organization are watching very closely because that's something that's going to impact the way we steer users to use Yammer or not. It looks like unless you're using Office 365, it's not an issue, right? Because it's not on premises or anything like that. The conflict really comes on when you are fully Office 365, right? And you're using SharePoint in the cloud only, and you're using Yammer in the cloud only, right? It's that one scenario. But that's more people, more companies, more enterprises are doing that, right? So people are dumping their own premises sites and going to cloud only.
You were talking about how just the licensing. Do you, as a large organisation, do you pay kind of per user, or if you're going to say you've got 120,000 people in the organisation, but you want to try it, you want to let anybody try it, do you buy accounts for every user, or how?
Ours is done, and I'm not the licensing person at all, but ours is done through the enterprise agreement with Microsoft. So we have, so it's a blanket. Yeah. Also creating an etiquette guide. What should you post? What should you not post? Just more do's and don'ts, right? Not necessarily, you'll get fired if you do this, but just do's and don'ts, common etiquette for posting in there. And another question is, can this replace email, right? Can this replace email in some cases? With our SharePoint migrations, it did. It replaced a bunch of email. And we were able to do things and search for things. And when issues came up, people could go, oh, and what we found was, as people start finding issues and resolving issues, sometimes issues get resolved by the people that post the question. They post the resolution. People can have that as a knowledge, tool, right? To go, hey, this person had the same issue. They solved it this way. I'm going to try that. So have a contest to drive participation is another option. You can use it as a help desk. Establish social groups. We've got groups not only for, like we had a SharePoint group, which we talked about, things like that, but we've also got groups for runners. We got groups for musicians. We got groups for blues musicians specifically. Whatever, things that go, a little more into the social things. Groups for barbecuing or whatever. So that you can find things like, the barbecue group. You go out there and share recipes. What's the best way to barbecue a suckling pig or whatever. Things like that. So social groups is really cool. And like the runners, for example, there's a SharePoint runners group where all of us runners get together at conferences or whatever. We'll go out for a run and we have a similar thing at my company to where, hey, I'm in New York this week. Anybody running or whatever? So we can find people that just enjoy running and they might know the routes better than you and see the city in a different way. So the social groups are big for us. So let the content grow organically. Don't try to force it or enforce it too much. Right, so at some point you're going to have to enforce something. Right, it is a professional organization, but letting the content grow organically is a big thing. Don't let people feel trapped by that. And I've put that copy paste there. So allow people to use it without fear. So specifically when the executives get involved, let people use the product and post messages without fear of getting fired if they ask the executive a question. Sometimes people feel really intimidated by asking the CEO of your organization a question about whatever. So allow people to use it without fear. It's not anything there. Everybody can learn something from whatever they have to say. Executive engagement. So look for feedback from people inside of your organization. We talked about the Red Robin hamburgers thing to where they had people serving hamburgers. They knew what was wrong. They were able to quickly correct the solution and come up with a solution for fixing fixing the problem. So, all right, well, thanks, everybody. See me afterwards if you want to discuss this.